All right, I think I'm live. I think I am live. Okay. So, welcome. This is the Q&A live session for this week for people who are taking my Algebra Made Simple course. I have a couple things I want to clarify that we didn't get a chance to cover when we were doing what do you call it? When we were doing our live teaching session last week. And so, I'm going to cover a few things. And if you happen to stumble upon this live video and you're in one of my courses, my Algebra 2, if you're a tutoring client or whatever way that we might be connected as math students, teacher and student, feel free to jump on here and comment and say, hey, if no one comes on, you can check the replay, of course. And if you have a specific question about anything that we're covering, this is mainly meant for my students, but I don't care. I'm just sharing some stuff. Feel free to jump on. But before we do, I put some time and effort. I have to just say, I put some time and effort into my intro song, and so I just want to play it, y'all. Let's just get hyped. Let's get excited here. All right, I'm gonna see if I can play this up. Can you hear that? Oh no, you can't hear my intro song. I really wanted my intro song. Let's see if this works. Can you hear that? I don't know how it comes in. You got to have an intro. If you think that you're great, hey, can't relate.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Math Make.
Now that's the intro of one of my other videos I did. What's going on? Turn off Bluetooth. Okay, so anyway, stop being silly. Let's get to it. So if you take a look right here, we've been talking about something called the classification of polynomials. And so I just want to point this out. Those of y'all who are in Algebra 1 or 2, you're probably had this discussion with your teacher. Sometimes it has to be briefly because you are maybe pushing through to cover so many standards by the end of the semester or what have you. There's other demands on your administration at times when it comes to how many things you have to teach. But I just want to just come back in and clarify. When we say the classification of polynomials, what we're really saying is how to name a polynomial. Just like a human being like myself, I'm Chris Morris. I have two names to let you really know who I am so you can pick me out of a crowd. If you yell down the hallway, Chris, you're probably going to get 7 guys turn their head because Chris is a very common name. But Chris Morris, there's not too many of us, although there are some. Okay, so when we classify polynomials, keep in mind we're talking about the special names. There's something called a monomial. A monomial can look like this, where you have, say, just the number 10. There's one term. That's considered a monomial. If you have 3x, that's also just one term. That's considered a monomial. You could also have a slightly more complicated one, like 5x squared y. That's still considered, people, one term because it's not separated by a plus sign or a minus sign, making it another term that you would count. So all three of these that you see right here are referred to as monomials. And it's mono, the prefix meaning one. Nomial is like a reference to the larger umbrella concept of polynomials. Now, as a reminder, a polynomial is a series of terms joined together by either addition or subtraction. These are your only two options. If you see a bunch of terms and maybe there's division going on, or you see, something raised to a greater power outside of it, that's not a polynomial. A polynomial is terms separated by either a plus sign, such as, I don't know, I'm making this one up, -9, something like that, where you see every term has a distinctive subtraction or plus in between it. That's what makes it a polynomial. But we can name the polynomials based on two factors. Those factors are degree and also the number of terms. For example, this polynomial, if you were paying attention to last class, has 3 terms. We call that a trinomial because tri means 3. Nomial is a reference to the fact that it's a polynomial. So trinomial meaning 3. But we could also call this, let me write that down. That's a trinomial. This is as good as I can write handwriting. Sorry, guys. All right. But it's also a quadratic because it has a degree of 2. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I'm trying to get that in there. You might be thinking, Chris, why do we call it a quadratic trinomial? It's a degree of 2. I thought quad meant 4, and usually it does. But in this case, when it comes to this world, this realm, this topic, this sector, when we're in math, Quadratic is a reference to a degree of 2. The name is quartic if it's a degree of 4. So this might be a little all over the place if you haven't had me in class, but this is meant for people who are specifically needing refreshing reminders as to what we discussed. So remember, if you're asked to classify a polynomial based on degree and number of terms, it could look a lot of different ways, quite frankly. Okay, I have a few samples here I wanted to look through, but maybe I'll just put this one up for a sample. Okay, let's say you had 4x cubed y to the second minus 10. Notice first off the bat, there are 2 terms. There's a name for 2 terms. I already know it's going to be a bi, meaning 2, nomial, because that's a reference to the fact that it's a polynomial. But also, we're taking into account the fact that it has a degree, a specific degree. And as you remember in class, the degree of a polynomial has to do with which term has the higher degree. If you paid attention in class, you might recall that whenever you have a term with 2 variable parts, such as 4x cubed y squared, you have an x, you have a y, the degree of that term will be the sum of the variable part. So you have 2 variables and they each have a power, 3 and 2. You add those together, sum. That makes the degree of this polynomial 5. I'm going to put that into a little box right there. Now, if it doesn't have a variable part, you just consider that to be a degree of 0. And between 5 and 0, 5 is definitely bigger than a degree of 0. So we would consider this entire polynomial to be a degree of 5. Now, there is some debate out there as to whether or not there's a special name for a degree of 5. Some people say, nah, just call it a 5th degree polynomial. But I was taught, and it's still in a lot of curriculums, we call that a quintic if it's a degree of 5. So we would call this a quintic binomial, and some people will just call it a 5th degree polynomial. I don't know why the difference there, but you'll see both. You'll see some people say there's no name, and then some people say, yes, there is. The degree is 5. That's called a quintic. Don't ask me. I'm just a messenger. I'm the mailman bringing you the news. I'm not the one who came up with it. Okay. So this is just a little refresher on the classification piece. You can look at the assignments if you need to see some other examples. Now, the one thing I wanted to hit real quickly, I'm not going to make this long. The one thing I wanted to hit real quickly is when you're asked to add polynomials. And so if you look at one of your assignments, there is a double part where you're going to classify it first, but then it has some situations where it's asking you to add some polynomials too. So what I'm going to do is just go on my back end here and pull some samples up. I want to pull one that you're actually working on. So give me just 1 second. I should have that up. Probably should have had it up before I started the video, but oh well. And so if you look at like specifically page 1 or 2, I'm going to look at maybe the bottom of page 1. You see a situation where there are 2 polynomials and they're asking you to add them together. We didn't get a chance to do a lot of this in class, so I'm going to go over it here on the live real briefly. If you look, you'll see 5x squared plus 8x minus 10. That's a quadratic trinomial. You'll see a plus sign, and then in another parentheses, they have negative 12. It looks like it's minus x, if you can see this. I'm having to squeeze it in here, plus 3x squared. And then they close off that parenthesis. Sorry, I had to just make sure that was the right thing. Okay, I'm just going to do one of these just to kind of hopefully refresh, clarify, and give you some insight. So whenever you're asked to add 2 polynomials together, you got to keep in mind a couple things. They have to be the same variable and power in order to add them together. What do you mean, Chris? Well, what I'm saying is, take a look here. You see how there's a 5x to the second? You got to find the other term in the other parenthesis that also has an x to the second. So if you look carefully, there's a 3x to the second in this parenthesis, a 5x to the, they are the only ones that are considered like terms. Therefore, you can only add them together. Okay? 5x plus 3x. 5 plus 3 is 8, and you just leave it an x squared. You don't add the powers. You don't do anything to the powers. It just lets you know what goes together. Then I'm looking at, look right here, you got an 8x. We'll find the other term in the other parenthesis that just has an x. That would be minus x over here. Now remember, if it's just minus x, think of that as a 1x, right? You could even pencil in a little 1 right there if you needed to. 8 plus a negative 1 is going to be positive 7. And since it was an x, you just keep it an x. That would be plus 7x. fact, let me just make that look a little cleaner there. There you go. Lastly, we'll look at what we call our constants, the 10 and the negative 12. In other words, the two terms that don't have a variable part at all. So positive 10 plus a negative 12 is minus 2, and so I do that at the end. I'm going to put in a big rectangle the final answer here. You can't combine terms that don't have the same variable and power. That's why 7x and 8x squared cannot be added together. They're considered different things. It's like apples and oranges. You don't put them together in the same compartment at the grocery store, if that makes some sense. Okay, so this is just a little walkthrough. It's a quick one. You can replay it and watch it as much as you need to on how you add polynomials. You have to pay attention to them being the same variable and the same degree in order to consider them like terms and to combine them together. Keep in mind that when we classify polynomials, it just means name them. And there's a list of names for number of terms: monomial, binomial, what is it, trinomial? I mean, those are your three options for the number of terms. But then there's a totally different list of names for the degree of the polynomial. That would be constant for a degree of 0, linear for a degree of 1, quadratic for a degree of 2, cubic for a degree of 3, quartic for 4, and as we just discussed, quintic for 5. Chris, what do I do if it's a 6th degree polynomial? Well, you just call it a 6th degree polynomial. Chris, what do I do if there's 4 terms? You just call it a 4-term polynomial. What do you think? Mathematicians have nothing to do but come up with names for every single possibility? Nah, man, we're not going to do that. They just have names for the first 3 terms, and they just have names for, I guess, the first 5 degrees, and then they got lazy and said, forget it. We're just going to stop naming them after that. That's just honestly how it is. And so I'm reporting those facts to you. So hopefully this is a helpful reminder as to what we talked about a week ago. You're going through those assignments and you might be having some stuck points or you can't quite remember. Hopefully this clears the fog out the way a little bit, and maybe you can get over that hump with less frustration and a little easier time, right? So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. And like if you said, it doesn't look like we caught it live, but we can go back and watch the replay. And this is an added resource. If y'all need help with tutoring, math programs, I have my Math Made Simple program, 10-week course, our very popular Algebra Made Simple 10-week course that really is good for laying a good foundation and filling in learning gaps in case maybe you missed some skills and you're about to enter your high school level years. It can be very helpful in that regard. Or you just need hourly tutoring to get you through a course or to get you caught up. Go to morrismodel.com, morrismodel.com. I'll put it in the chat, and we'd love to connect with you and see if we can help come alongside you and make your journey with your student be more successful. There it is in the chat if you need to connect with me. But anyway, love you guys. Have a good one, a good week, and hopefully this is a help. Let me know.